Frontier by Maggot Moshpit, Chapter 12. General Nephron sat in the High Council chambers, reading endless war reports, casualty lists, and projections. He was beginning to grow weary of this daily ritual. The rebel factions had gained another few kilometers of land, and showed no signs of slowing down. He stroked his long, white beard, which protruded from his large, wrinkled chin. Any human, or perhaps a knowledgeable Atrian, that saw him might mistake him for a large monkey, but with a nose that caused his face to look arrow-like. No inch of skin was without hair, all white or brown, and there was no real way of predicting which one it might be. A noise disturbed his reading, and a herald hurried into the hall, rung a small bell, and knelt at his feet.
"General, your wife to see you."
General Nephron waved his hand, and the herald quickly retreated. A tall woman strode into the room, wearing a massive billowing garment that defied definition.
"My husband, must you sit in here all day and read those reports that foresee doom? Come, spend some time with your children."
Nephron blew air out of his nose, making a hissing sound.
"My wife, the rebel factions grow in strength each day. I must do my duty lest they march into the capital and slaughter us all."
His wife had not come into the room seeking his presence, but rather to have him assure her that the war was going well. Upon seeing her downcast face, he quickly reassured her.
"But never fear. Soon enough, we will have the troops back from Sim, and with them General Helene, a brilliant strategist. We will soon crush the rebel factions and restore this great nation."
She smiled.
"Yes. And then you will come play with the children?"
"Absolutely, my wife."
The herald ran back into the room, rang the small bell again, and knelt before the general.
"General, sir, our scouts report a strange light in the sky. It seems a star has fallen to the ground."
The general couldn't believe his ears.
"A star, you say? Are you sure the scouts have not been drinking too much wine?"
The herald held his arms up.
They describe with great detail how the star streaked across the sky before slowly falling to the ground in the fields west of the capital. I have your ride arranged, if you would like to make the discovery yourself."
He bowed to his wife.
"I shall. Tell someone to finish up those reports."
He stepped smartly through the door, down corridors, and out into the streets. The streets in front of the High Council chambers were bustling, young soldiers patrolling with their rifles slung over their shoulders, children running across the streets, and automobiles skidding along the roads, electric motors humming. Steam rose from a nearby vent in the ground. Underground restaurants were very popular these days, Nephron thought to himself. He climbed into his car, a spidery contraption, metal sticking out at odd angles to accommodate the average size of any given occupant. 2 soldiers sat in the back with him, and 1 more drove. One of them bowed as best he could in the car.
"General, I'm from the Scout Regiment."
"Tell me what you have seen."
The car sped off down the road towards the western fields. The soldier looked apologetic as he bowed a second time.
"Nothing personally, General, but I can attest for the accuracy of my comrade's statements. A star did fall from the sky."
The general's time was precious, and he frowned at the soldier.
"If this is a useless endeavor, I will be very cross."
The soldier closed his eyes tightly.
"Yes, General."
The car bumped along the roads, heading into the countryside. The road was dusty and not well kept, but it led them close to the site of the reported fallen star. The 4 climbed out of the car and were greeted by another soldier. His face still held the wonder of the spectacle he allegedly witnessed.
"General Nephron, sir? You won't believe this."
"I'm starting to agree with you. Take me to the star."
The soldier led him through the woods as he babbled his report.
"Sir, it's not a star anymore. We watched it from the woods as it glowed, but it soon began to cool off, and we saw fine details, windows and other such things. It's a building, sir."
2 of the other soldiers gasped.
"Could it be the Star Cutter of Lore?"
The general scoffed.
"There is no such thing."
The soldier who had spoken jumped.
"Yes, sir."
"It is only the product of an overactive imagination."
"Yes, sir."
"It is..."
They reached the clearing and General Nephron looked across the field and beheld the Star Cutter of Lore.
"By God, you're right."
There it sat, like a giant building, with 3 sections, 2 of them longer and thinner, the center fatter and shorter. The general smiled.
"Perhaps we found the solution to our rebel problem. Divine intervention."
Lef clung to his seat, staring intently into the screen, still not believing they had actually landed without any damage. Lena was practically frozen in place. Her paws gripped the wheel tightly, her blood pumping fast in her veins as the adrenaline ran its course. Leff turned to Zack.
Did we make it in time?
Zack pressed a few buttons and looked at the data on his screen.
Yes. The hull breach didn't have time to widen enough to do any permanent damage.
Leff quickly hit the intercom.
Rackham, report to the cockpit.
Rackham looked like hell. His eyes were red from being in a pressure-free environment, and capillaries all over his body had burst, bruising much of it. He was supporting Sirlia, who showed similar effects. Leff jumped up as he saw them.
I told you not to stay in that bay too long.
Rackham shrugged.
We had to get my people out. Luckily we did. No one's been hurt any.
Sirlia slumped against the wall.
I still don't understand it. Where did that breach come from?
I think it's just because the ship is old, though I thought they built them tougher than this. It doesn't even have emergency bulkheads, otherwise we wouldn't have had to land.
Lena finally relaxed, but soon a realization hit her.
Zack, did you complete the scans of this planet?
Zack checked his console.
Yeah. Oxygen, nitrogen atmosphere, dense vegetation, humanoid life. Leff, they don't have space travel yet.
What? Are you sure?
He double-checked the scans.
Yep. We're in big trouble.
Rackham was not well versed in interstellar law, and he looked around in confusion.
What are you going on about?
Leff ran his paw through his fur in exasperation.
It's illegal to in any way influence any alien culture that doesn't have space travel yet. There is some leniency when it comes to emergencies, but not much. We have to get out of here. Fast.
He turned to Zack.
Zack, find Feldo. Fix the hull breach as fast as you can. Lena, find out whether we've been found yet.
Sirlia tried to climb to her feet.
But that's my job.
Leff caught her before she fell to the ground.
You're in no shape to do any job. Come on, Dee will patch you up.
He practically carried her out the door.
But she is not even a real doctor.
Rackham followed them.
She's as close as it gets. Don't worry, we'll have you good as new in no time.
Lena was alone in the cockpit. She sat in the co-pilot seat and ran a scan of the area. Unfortunately, it seemed that the sensors were offline, and they only fed her a string of impossible data. She frowned. It looked like she would just have to look out the windows. The cockpit windows were closed automatically as the ship's external temperature rose to critical levels, ensuring the interior of the ship remained protected during re-entry. Lena opened one such window and looked out into the woods. The trees twisted and wound around each other strangely, almost as if they were one tree and not many. The plant life fascinated her so much she didn't notice the four men standing below her, watching. When she glanced down, she locked eyes with General Nephron for a long second, before jumping back away from the window and quickly closing it again. She ran out of the cockpit and down the hall towards where the colonists were relocated. General Nephron looked at where Lena had been only moments before.
What a strange beast.
The two other soldiers cowered with fear behind the general.
Did you see those teeth, sir?
One of them stammered. This entire situation intrigued the general. He knew the creators of his world would not act with aggression, but why they would keep pets was beyond him.
Yes, it seems to be a carnivore. Strange, it seemed to be walking upright. Only omnivores stand upright. Perhaps it is another creation of the stars?
But where are the stars? Should they not have made their intent known by now?
The general wheeled on the soldier.
Fool! They will show themselves when they see fit. Go back to the capital, get the ambassador and the press. This must be made known.
The soldiers scuttled back into the woods while somehow also bowing. Nephron walked around the Star Cutter of Lore, examining the strange symbols, odd protrusions, and strange angles. The remaining two soldiers following behind, not wanting to abandon their leader, but also staying cautious. Nephron eventually came to a spot on the wall of the Star Cutter which appeared to be a door of some kind, judging by the seams in it.
Is this a door? If it opened, it would be very difficult for someone to use it. It's almost 5 feet off the ground.
The general thought about this.
The stars may not need solid ground to walk on. They must float.
The two soldiers nodded at the general's wisdom. A panel caught the general's eye.
What's this?
He walked up to it, running his hand over the metal covering. To his surprise, the panel fell off, revealing a lever. He studied it for a time, then pulled it down with some difficulty. There was a loud hissing sound, and the general jumped back from the wall, the two soldiers frozen in place. Soon the ramp came down, exposing the interior of the ship.
It was a ramp.
The general muttered to himself. He and the two soldiers slowly ascended the ramp.
Are you sure they saw you?
Lef sat with Lena as the bustle of colonists moved here and there, either receiving treatment from Dee, who had her paws full, or moving their belongings back into the converted cargo bay. She nodded.
Yes, they looked like military men. I should have been more careful.
Now, none of that. Urgh!
Lef clutched his head, a familiar, unwelcome feeling sweeping across his mind. Lena grabbed his arms.
Lef! Is it...
Lena's voice was coming from the end of a long, dark tunnel. He followed her voice. When he emerged from the tunnel, he saw her face, ears back, the look on it showing concern.
Peach, the loading bay.
Lef! Are you okay? You blacked out there for a moment.
The loading bay!
What? Did you see something?
We have visitors.
He stood and walked towards the door.
Get Zack and tell him to bring one of the translators we got on Coron 4. Bring him and the device to the loading bay.
But...
Just go. I'll be fine.
Lena stood there for a second, then went to do what she was bid. Lef headed for the loading bay, making sure he had the small energy pistol Ray had given him. The general and the soldiers looked around the interior with awe. To them, all the lights, panels, and consoles all looked as though they had religious significance, or perhaps held great power. Soon Lef stepped from a door and confronted the two. One of the soldiers pointed his gun at Lef, but General Nephron swatted it away. Lef frowned. The general made a series of clicking sounds that might have been a language. Lef smiled and held out his paws.
Now, gentlemen, we, come in peace.
The general took a step back as Lef smiled. Although Lef couldn't understand exactly what was said, from how the general reacted, he knew something frightened him. The general pointed to his own mouth. Lef realized he was baring his rather imposing teeth at the general, and he stopped smiling.
Sorry,
Lef took a step forward. The two soldiers took a step back, the general standing his ground. Lef extended his paw to the general. He looked at it curiously, looking at each of his fingers, and the pad on his palm and digits. He looked at Lef, then at his paw, then slowly extended his own hand, which only had 4 fingers. Lef took it and shook it firmly. The general looked shocked, but he saw Lef's positive reaction and smiled too. Lef put his paw against his chest.
Lef.
The general took a few seconds to get what Lef was trying to say.
Lef.
Lef spoke the syllables slowly.
Lef.
Lef.
Lef nodded.
Yeah, there you go. My name's Lef. What's yours?
The general was about to introduce himself when Lena and Zack came into the room.
This better be... Oh, wow.
Zack looked at the aliens with wonder.
They look like monkeys.
The general pointed at Zack.
Zack, this'll be easier with that translator set up.
Lef watched the general's increasing agitation, the two soldiers behind him inching closer and closer to the end of the ramp. Zack walked up to the general and held up the device. The general looked at it like it might explode. Zack nodded.
Yeah, just keep talking.
He gestured at his mouth, miming words pouring forth. Lena watched with fascination as the general just kept talking. His anatomy was similar to other races, but the differences were clear. It was this type of discovery she couldn't get enough of. The general's words began to make sense.
Star. What? God's help.
Zack looked at the tiny screen.
It's almost done.
The general's eyes opened wide as he pointed at Zack.
Understood.
Yep. We'll be able to understand each other soon.
Lef looked at the state of the general and his soldiers. He knew the cultural contamination was already bad. Very bad.
Then what? Do we just up and leave?
The general waved his arms.
No, don't leave. Heralds of the Stars, we need your help.
Lena stepped closer.
Herald of the Stars? What do you mean?
The general pointed at her.
You! Do you not bring with you the great stars to aid us in our war?
War? No. I mean, we do come from the stars.
Lef cut in.
What she means is we're leaving very soon, so just forget you saw us and never speak of this to anyone.
The general looked at Lena's chest, puzzled.
Did you say she? You truly are strange indeed.
Lena crossed her arms.
Hey! We're aliens! Don't expect us to live up to your unrealistic standards!
Peach?
The general was taken aback.
Aliens, you say? So, you aren't from the stars?
Zack waved his arms.
Now, wait, we didn't deny it.
The general drew his sidearm.
Enough of this! It is clear by everything, your language, appearance, and ignorance, that you are not from the stars. Therefore, it is my duty to take you in for questioning. Take them away!
The two terrified soldiers gained some confidence from the boldness of the general, and they marched up the ramp, guns at the ready. Lef was desperate, so he bared his teeth and growled as loud as he could. The two soldiers backed up, but the general pushed them forward.
Don't be fools. If they make a move, shoot them.
The soldiers grabbed Lena and Zack, and the general took hold of Lef.
Is there any more on this vessel?
Lef shook his head.
No, it's just us.
They were pushed and shoved off the ship. Nephron replaced the lever, and the ramp closed. As they were pushed through the woods, they met up with another group of aliens. They stopped dead when they saw who the general was escorting. One of them took what seemed to be a photograph. Nephron bowed to them.
Ambassador Buta, do not be alarmed.
The ambassador was very, very short, and also old. He wasn't lacking in gusto, however.
What is the meaning of this? These are not stars.
Nephron held up his arms and bowed again.
My apologies. The reports about the stars are a result of the scouts having an overabundance of seal.
Buddha stomped his foot.
Then what are those?
The general bowed again, as if it would calm the ambassador down.
Aliens, Ambassador.
The ambassador did something unexpected. He turned around and walked away, muttering,
I'm going back to bed.
The general called after him as more soldiers filed in beside them.
We'll have this cleared up, Ambassador.
They were led along further. Zack looked over at Lena.
Nice going.
Lef glared at him as Lena looked at the ground.
Shut up, Zack. You aren't helping things.
Zack glared right back.
Don't you think you're a little biased? She messed up. Let her take responsibility.
Lef was about to make a retort when Lena put a paw on his shoulder.
He's right, Lef. I shouldn't have said anything. Sorry.
He took her paw.
Something tells me he would have dragged us off regardless.
You might be right. What's the plan? I told Celia not to bother us, but she'll get worried soon enough and find us gone. Maybe they'll come rescue us?
Quiet! No talking unless spoken to, one of the soldiers yelled. They kept quiet, and soon they were shoved into a large automobile with a flatbed in the back. It hummed and sped off towards the capital. Celia sat on a crate near the door leading to the loading ramp. She had been treated, though there wasn't much Dee could do. Luckily, her injuries were mostly superficial. She checked the time on her SCOM. It was time to check on them, even though Zack warned that the more the not merrier. She stood shakily and went through the door. Nothing. Not a sign of anyone. Not a speck. She ran as fast as she could back into the ship.
Rackham, we've got a problem.